folks, Scott here with the new My Monthly Hero December 2020 kit. I do have some fun news this month. On the first day that this kit was getting its sneak peeks, Hero Arts announced that I and Tina Smith, yay Tina, have been added to the Hero Arts team as video artists. Yay! It's official! Now I can put my little Hero Arts medal on all of my card pictures. No, really, it's an incredible honor. I'm thrilled. I'm tickled pink. Who could ask for a better Christmas present this year? Let's get to this kit. So this is our 6x8" stamp set. It looks like a layering stamp. I don't know if they're going to call this a Heroscapes or not, but it's definitely a cloudy sky. We've got, this looks like sky and then two clouds. I'm sure they all layer on top of each other. Then we've got this great big sunburst and a smaller sunburst over here. There's a little sun right there. Only a few sentiments here, sending you a little sunshine or hope, wishing you a better tomorrow, amen, and it's a new day. Every day the sun is still going to come up. This is really great, really how apropos at the end of 2020. We do get dies this month too. We get this very interesting hope word fancy die, and we get a cloudy window die, this round one, and then a regular cloud die here. I did punch those out just to let you know what they look like. Here is that hope word die, which is really fascinating. Really cool how the lines of the O go out through all of the letters. This is two dies actually. There's an outline die and the inner fancy die. So there's actually two of those together. So it will cut that word out. It will also cut that word in two. And then this is our cloud window die. I fiddled around a bit trying to figure out which direction this went. I think putting this flat edge of a cloud straight across seems to make the most sense. And of course, here's that other individual cloud die. Three great dies in our kit this month, all fancy dies. We do get some extras this month as well. We get a 4-pack of ink cubes. These are reactive ink cubes. We have reactive early dawn, reactive yellow chartreuse, reactive morning mist, and reactive thistle, which I think the thistle is in their regular reactive ink line. 4 ink cubes, and we also get a pot of this great yellow Prisma embossing powder. Plenty of glitter in that embossing powder. Here comes the sun. I think it's a great idea to spend some time sharing a little hope with our friends and families at the end of this bizarre year. Let's make some cards. And here we have my 10 cards for this month. We are all white card bases, all A2 cards, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I went ahead and let my trial die cuts go ahead and dictate my first card here. So for our first card, we've got sending you a little hope using that cloud window die that I cut out of some gray cardstock from my stash. I like the gray clouds and the colorful sky behind that. On the front of my white card base, I blended some Hero Arts Lemon Drop reactive ink lightly on the bottom, and some of that Early Dawn reactive ink from the kit directly on my card front. Then I stamped the little sun stamp using the Lemon Drop ink, and then stamped the big sun rays around that using the Hero Arts embossing and watermark ink. And then I did emboss that with that lemon prism embossing powder. Really sparkly, really nice. I took my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers, a light gray, and gave just a little bit of definition to the clouds, kind of extended them out a little bit on my gray card front. I stamped Sending You a Little Hope. I stamped that with Hero Arts Intense Black ink, and then embossed that with some clear embossing powder. I mounted that gray panel on top using some foam tape, and added our cloud fancy die cut out of the gray on the top here too. Just a little bit more dimension, Sending You a Little Hope. I really like that window die. I love that sunshine and those sunbeams, and that yellow Prisma embossing powder is really sparkly and pretty. Worked very well. So it does seem like this window die is made for a portrait card. It doesn't really, well, you could use it on a landscape card, but I wanted to see if I could possibly extend this die a little bit and make it more usable on a landscape orientation. So for our second card, we've got our hope card. Of course, I was dying to use that hope die as well, with that cloud window cut behind that in a large kind of oval, kind of a racetrack shape. I did some partial die cutting with this die. I just marked the center of the die with a permanent black Sharpie, just marked where that center was, and then die cut the right side of that from a panel of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch cardstock. Just partially die cut that to the center mark, moved it to the left, trying to keep it nice and level, and then die cut the other half of that using partial die cutting. Then I just cut a straight line attaching the two top edges of our window, and for the bottom there, I used the Cloud Fancy die and partial die cutting to connect the two sides of the circle die right there. Partial die cutting just where it meets up with that circle window die. It worked out very nicely. I really like that wide open window that it gives us here. I die cut that panel with a full-size Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I took a piece of blue watercolor pattern paper. This is from an old Alta New paper pad. I think this was on a special sale or something, but I grabbed this up many years ago and it's come in very handy over the years. Some blue watercolor paper. I cut that to size and glued that down to my white card base. I glued the window on top of that. Now I die cut our hope die from some black cardstock for the outline, and then I cut just the outline die out of some more of my watercolor pattern paper. Those two dies come in very handy. Together, they'll cut out the outlines, and individually, you can get just the very outline shape. So that's easier than poking and prodding and piecing all of those pattern papers in there. So I cut that whole piece of yellow pattern paper, glued my black frame to the top of that. I thought it wanted a little bit more sparkle, so I went in and cut the frame die again using some black tie glitter paper and glued that to the top. Gives us a nice little sparkle there. Hope, I really like that the hope fits inside that window on the front of our card. I didn't think that was quite enough, so on the inside I stamped "It's a New Day," and that's our second card. Love that hope die. It's really kind of stunning and very unique. So let's do some stamp layering. I took our sky and cloud layering stamps and stamped them using the ink from our kit. So this is the early dawn in the background, the morning mist pink, and then the thistle ink on all three of these. I wasn't too thrilled with how those three worked together, but it gave me an idea of how these layering stamps worked. And the most important part, as far as I was concerned, was that it leaves a lot of white space. Not a lot, but a decent amount of white space towards the bottom of the clouds. That made me think of our gray clouds again. So for our third card, we have "Wishing You a Better Tomorrow," with pink and gray and purple clouds on the horizon. I really like this. I took just another piece of my old gray cardstock. I stamped our two cloud stamps using both the thistle and the morning mist inks, and then I stamped our flock of birds at the top there too, using the purple and the pink inks again from the kit. I stamped our sentiment here using, again, the thistle reactive ink. Because that is a reactive ink, it will hold embossing powder. So I embossed that with a little bit of clear embossing powder. That's the only shine we've got here. I die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, glued that down to a thin white mat, a thicker pink mat, and then a thin purple mat, and then down to our white cardstock. Wishing you a better tomorrow. I love that sentiment. I think it certainly will be a very useful sentiment beyond the year 2020. And when I first started playing with these dies, I took some Bristol Smooth cardstock and I cut out a couple of the Hope word dies from Bristol Smooth cardstock, thinking that I'd use my Zig Clean color markers to color some of these up, make them pretty. So for our fourth card here, we've got a Choose Hope card. Look at that. I'm really pleased with this. Again, I went with black for the outline. I stuck again with that black tie glitter paper just for a little sparkle and shine. I really like that black tie glitter paper. I don't know if you can still find it. If I can find it, I'll put a link to it over on my website at cardcutouts.com. But it's not heavily glittered, but it's got nice little sparkles of colorful glitter all throughout it. So I cut the outline from that black tie glitter paper. I took my die cut on the Bristol Smooth cardstock and colored all our little pieces using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I took my white card base and I printed this Choose on the top of that using my Silhouette software and the, what is this? This is the DIN alternate font. I'll put links to these fonts on my website as well. I gave that a little color there before I printed that on my cardstock. Again, I use my Silhouette software and my Canon MX922 printer to print my extra sentiments directly on my card front. After I printed the Choose, then I glued the black outline down to the card front and then pieced in all of the colored pieces of that Hope die, green and blue. My final touch on this was a little heart gem right in the middle. That's right, a little heart gem. This makes me think of the Hope diamond, although of course the Hope diamond is more of a soft blue color, and of course it's much larger than this. This is an old Oriental Trading Company gem I've had in my stash forever, but the green was perfect. It works great. Instead of the shining sun, we've got a shining gem here. Choose Hope. I hope everybody chooses hope. I've chosen hope to be my byword for this entire year. So our little sun stamp here is actually just half of a sun. So I wondered if I could actually use that stamp and the sunbeams to make a complete sun all by itself. So for card number 5, we've got Sending You Sunshine with a nice full sun right in the middle of the card. Nice and simple, but bright and sunshiny. I stamped our little half sun stamp in the center here. I went to my Distress Oxide inks for this card, and this is stamped using squeezed lemonade Distress Oxide ink and some spiced marmalade Distress Oxide ink around the sides. Now, I was very careful with the straight edge of that stamp to not over ink it at all, so I didn't get a hard line down the center. I matched those up and bottom and then used a tiny little ink blender brush to blend those two stamps together and get one solid circle. I think our half circle sun stamp is just a little bit shy of a complete half circle, so this gave us just a little bit of an oval sun, but it works for me good enough. I took the small sunbeam stamp and stamped it top and bottom using spiced marmalade Distress Oxide ink. I tried to get it darker at the center, a little lighter at the edges, and then took the large sunbeam stamp and stamped that on top of those using the squeezed lemonade Distress Oxide ink. Oh, those sunbeam stamps work great together. Really gives some nice shine and dimension to that sun. I partially stamped the Sending You, just masked off a little on the top of the card, stamped Sunshine on the bottom. So we've got Sending You, Sunshine. Those are all stamped in intense black ink. Nice, simple, bright, sunshiny card. This is a perfect card for anybody you know that lives in the Pacific Northwest. Sending you sunshine. So the top, our background stamp with our clouds and sky has actually got an edge to that. So I thought we needed to do that on a card front and actually use that stamp for this card. You are my sunshine. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Put a piece of masking tape down to delineate my horizon here. I ink blended the sky here using some squeezed lemonade, a little bit of spiced marmalade. I used a little bit of lemon drop reactive ink and a touch of creamsicle reactive ink, and then added just a tiny little bit of that pink morning mist from our kit right at the edge of the horizon. Of course, I did mask out a little half-inch sun right there as well, so I didn't ink that up. Inked that up lightly and took that yellow very lightly all the way to the top of the card. Then I stamped our layering stamps using the Early Dawn blue ink from our stamp kit, and then I used Faded Jeans Distress Oxide ink for the top of the clouds, and again back to that morning mist pink for the bottom of our clouds. I went back and did the sunbeams again the exact same way I did before. I stamped the small sun ray stamp using creamsicle ink. I stamped the large sun ray stamp using the lemon drop ink, and then embossed that with the yellow prism embossing powder. That's a great, I love those very thin lines on those sunbeams. Really pretty. Once that was done, I reversed my horizon masking and masked out the center of this and ink blended some more of that Early Dawn ink from our kit to make our little C here. I wanted to leave enough room for this sentiment to really pop. I printed "You Are My" on this card front, again using my Silhouette software, and this is the Century Gothic font. The Century Gothic font, which I believe to be a completely accurate match for the big block prints in this stamp set. Century Gothic. Again, there'll be a link to that on my website at cardcutups.com. You Are My Sunshine, printed and stamped with intense black ink. I thought the ocean felt a little blank down here to me, so I remembered the July of 2019 stamp set had these little water ripples stamps in it. So I thought I'd bring those water ripples in on this card and add a little rippling to the water. I went ahead and embossed those with the yellow prism embossing powder. I thought that worked really nice and kind of gave us a little sense of water there. I kind of wish those ripple lines were a little bit thinner and they would have matched our sunbeams a little bit more, but I really like the effect. I finally went in with a little bit of squeezed lemonade Distress Oxide ink, and I inked in the sun very lightly, added a little touches of yellow in my little sun reflection here. I realize that's not very accurate or realistic as far as the sun shining on the water goes, but I really like this whole little scene all put together, and heaven knows you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Now, of course, when I dig out these water ripples stamps from this July 19 kit, I realize there's mountains here too. I've got a couple of layering stamps for the mountains. Wouldn't that work great on a nice sunshine card as well? This is our next one. It's a new day. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life for me. Boy, that's an old one. This was interesting because I actually took a panel of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch cardstock, and I did all of my inking on that panel. I stamped the mountains using the Thistle reactive ink, and then stamped the layer on top of that using some Hero Arts Unicorn white ink. I masked that off and then ink blended the sky with squeezed lemonade ink, very light yellow, and then I stamped the clouds again using that Faded Jeans Distress Oxide ink and back to the Morning Mist pink ink from our kit. And then, of course, I did emboss both of the small and the large sunbeam stamps using creamsicle ink for the small one, and then lemon drop ink for the large one, adding more of that yellow prism embossing powder on that. I really like that. So then on my card base, I took that cloud window die and die cut that directly out of my card front. I stamped the sentiment here using, again, that Faded Jeans Distress Oxide ink, and I embossed that with a little clear embossing powder. And then I took that panel and trimmed off a little edge on the side so it would tuck in behind the front of our card, and I glued that right behind my card front. This gives us actually a really nice sense of dimension without using any foam tape whatsoever. I really like that. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. For all of us, I hope. Those mountains from the July of 2019 kit work so nicely with those sunbeam stamps. Now, on December 8th, one of the designers with Hero Arts, Shannon, posted a YouTube video using a stained glass technique and this Hope word die, using glossy accents and coloring up that die with her Copic markers. I thought it was beautiful, and I wondered if I could actually make a card that is really stained glass. So we've got another Hope card that is actually stained glass. Isn't that fun? Now, I was only able to do this. I recently purchased, these are Cosmic Shimmer Crystal Tints. I bought these, gosh, I think in February or March of this year, and I hadn't used them yet. So I thought it would be great fun to try and use these with this Hope word die and come up with a real stained glass effect. I did practice this once before I actually used it on this card. I got a little bit of bleeding over here with between my reds and yellows, but it came out really nicely. I die cut the black outlines using some thick black cardstock with some score tape on the back of it. I wanted a solid glue layer to go down to my acetate so I didn't get any of that crystal tints seeping underneath the edges. So I glued that down to a piece of acetate and then put my little crystal tints in all of the areas. It was a little fussy getting it to move into especially some of these really thin lines on the O, but all in all, it wasn't too hard to work with, especially for my first time working with it, and I was really pleased with how it came out. One tip, if you're using it, let your colors dry before you go to another color. If they're wet whatsoever, they will just bleed right into each other. So after all of my crystal tints had dried, I cut a panel at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches and used the outline die alone to cut a hole in the middle of that panel. Then I took my white card base and I matched that same hole on the front panel of the white cardstock. Look at that. Shining through inside there. So I have a white panel with the Hope cut out of it. My card front has the Hope cut out of it. I glued the acetate in between those two pieces and glued those together. I did go back in and I die cut one more layer of that black outline and glued that over the top. That really sharpened up everything and made any overflows that appeared when I was putting in those tints disappear completely. So there's an extra layer of that black on top here, and I die cut another one for the inside, so the inside would be nice and clean as well. Of course, this is put on backwards, but it is glued on the inside and makes the inside nice and clean, very sharp. I would tell the recipient of this card to cut the front of it off and hang it up in their window. I love this. I am so thrilled with that. This is my first time using those cosmic shimmer crystal tints. I have a link to them over on my website. This is really, really a pretty card. Kind of surprising. So I was wondering, well, that's all plastic. Could I peel this off of my acetate? And sure enough, once everything was dry, I was able to peel that right off of my acetate. I have got one terrific little window sticker to put in my window. I will definitely put this probably in my living room window to get me through these next 6 months before we can get back to work. So much fun. I was so excited to play with those crystal tints. I had a great time doing that, and I think it gave us a fun, really, really pretty card. Now, I seem to have gotten really stuck in the mindset of using this hope die as stained glass, what with my black outlines for all of it. It certainly pops, but I guess it didn't ever really occur to me to try other colors for those outlines. But by this point, I was wondering if you could use that word die without the outline, and if you could still read the word hope. So for our next card here, we've got Hope, Dwell in Possibility. I really like this one too. And look at that hope die cut without the outline. It works perfectly. You can certainly read exactly what it says. That excites me. I think that shows that that hope die has a lot of versatility there. Now, I took a piece of that blue watercolor pattern paper again, the same old Alta-New watercolor pattern paper. I cut that down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, glued that on the front of a white card base. I die cut our hope from some Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock. And then I took the outline and laid that down on my card, taped it down lightly, and then glued all of the pieces in using the outline as a pattern. So I got all of my pieces in the right spot. I had to take very good care to not get too much glue on each of these little pieces so they wouldn't inadvertently stick the outline die down. But I took my time, used very little glue, and got all of our pieces down, and then peeled up the outline pattern, and we've got that lovely hope in the middle of our card. Again, I printed up this little extra sentiment, Dwell in Possibility, on a scrap of white cardstock using my Silhouette software. And again, this is in the Century Gothic font, so it matches this kit perfectly. I trimmed that down to a little banner, glued that down to our front card base. Hope, Dwell in Possibility. I love that. I think I got that from an old, I believe that's an old Emily Dickinson poem, I Dwell in Possibility. Dwell in Possibility. I really like that. Very simple. Love that watercolor pattern paper. Comes in so handy sometimes. Let's dwell in possibility. Amen. It's possible I may get back to work sometime next year. Okay, I have used everything in this kit already, once or twice or 2 or 3 times. Well, we've got 4 hopes here. We've got 3 of the window dies. There's the cloud die, the sun. Now, the only stamp that seemed adaptable to any other things was our little half circle sun stamp down here. So I picked that up, started playing with it, thought I could possibly get some kind of a fun pattern out of it. For our last card here, we've got a thank you card with a fun double half circle pattern paper on the back. I have to tell you, I was a little distressed that I hadn't used this yellow chartreuse ink pad that was in our kit. So I thought, well, let's try something that uses all 4 of these inks all together on one card. This is it. I really like this. It's almost retro with this little pattern here. So I put a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white cardstock panel in my MISTI and started started stamping our little half circles. I stamped all of the vertical lines first, and all of our stamps are 1.25 inches apart from each other. You should be able to replicate this using that 1.25 inch measurement. And I alternated our colors around, came up with this really nice pattern. I'm really pleased with this. I trimmed that down to 4 inches by 5.25, glued that down to my white card base. I dug out, this is an old, I think it's a Doris Sentiments for Cards die. I think this is about the biggest sentiment die I have in my stamp, so I thought it would work really well. I die cut that from some 110-pound cardstock 3 times, glued those all together, and then I took my Thistle ink cube and direct to that sentiment, I inked the top layer of that. That came out really well. I really will remember that method instead of trying to ink up the cardstock before you die cut or after you die cut. Just go ahead and glue them all together, and then especially if you have just a cube, you can just press that on the top of that and it will color up your sentiment perfectly. Matches the purple on the card. Thank you. A really fun, very retro pattern here. Actually looks nothing like all of the other cards this month, but there is some options that you can get with this kit. That's my 10 cards using the My Monthly Hero December 2020 card kit. This is a great harbinger of hope for the coming holidays and the coming year. This week we just got a vaccine approved. As far as I'm concerned, that's reason to hope. That's reason to hope a lot. I am begging. Hamilton has announced that they will be reopening on July 4th, so I'm hoping that everybody in the theater will be opening up by July 4th. God, it'd be great if I could get back to work before then. I really love these cards. I really love this kit. Of course, this kit sold out in a day or two. I think this definitely hit a nerve with crafters across the country and across the world this year. This is definitely needed at this point in our lives. And thank you so much for joining me here and sharing your time with me. So of course, this kit has already sold out, but if you do go shopping at Hero Arts, please use my link in the description down below. It really does help me keep our heads above water during these trying times. And I beg you to please take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones. The virus is kind of running rampant all across America right now. And I hope that, there's that word again, and I hope that all of you will stay safe and healthy over the holidays. I send you and yours heartfelt blessings and wish you all joy, health, and happiness for the coming new year. Thank you so much for all of your support and encouragement this year. It means so much to me. I would probably have gone out of my mind totally if I didn't have something to do in my craft room over these last 10 months. You have blessed me immeasurably this year, and it means the world to me. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. I do wish you all a happy, healthy, and safe holiday. And as always, I wish you happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.